Spain, a country renowned for its stunning landscapes, vibrant culture, and centuries of history, also plays a significant role in the European economy. But despite its many strengths, Spain is sitting on a ticking economic time bomb. From a shaky housing market to high unemployment, inflation, and a rising national debt, Spain faces a series of challenges that, if not addressed soon, could lead to a major crisis within the Eurozone. So what's going on, and why should we be paying attention? To understand Spain's current predicament, we have to go back to 2008. The global financial crisis hit Spain hard. The Spanish economy was heavily reliant on construction and real estate at the time. When the housing bubble burst, it triggered widespread unemployment, bank failures, and a recession that lasted for years. Spain, like many other nations, struggled to recover. It wasn't until several years later that the country began to see signs of real growth again. Fast forward to today. On the surface, Spain's economy seems to be in better shape. In 2023, the country reported solid economic growth, driven in part by its tourism sector, which has always been a major economic engine. In fact, Spain is one of the most visited countries in the world, with millions of tourists contributing to local economies every year. However, when we look closer, we can see that some of the same issues that caused the crisis in 2008 are starting to resurface. One major area of concern is Spain's real estate market. Home prices have been rising rapidly again, especially in major cities like Madrid and Barcelona. While this is great for property developers and investors in the short term, it's creating the same kind of bubble we saw before. The average Spaniard is finding it harder and harder to afford a home. Rents are skyrocketing, and many people are being pushed out of the housing market altogether. The real estate boom is being fueled by cheap loans and speculative investment. But what happens if interest rates rise, or if the economy slows down? If people can no longer afford their mortgage payments, we could see a wave of foreclosures and bank losses similar to what we saw in 2008. And let's not forget that Spain's banks still hold significant amounts of bad debt from the previous crisis. A collapse in the housing market would have devastating consequences for the entire financial sector. But real estate isn't the only issue Spain is grappling with. Unemployment remains a persistent problem, particularly among young people. Although the overall unemployment rate has improved since the height of the crisis, it's still one of the highest in the Eurozone. Many jobs that have been created in recent years are low-paying, temporary, or part-time positions. This means that a large portion of the Spanish workforce lacks job security, and without stable, long-term employment, it's difficult for people to plan for their futures, invest in housing, or even start families. Youth unemployment in particular is a ticking time bomb. Spain has one of the highest rates of youth unemployment in the developed world. Many young Spaniards, even those with university degrees, are struggling to find stable work. They often find themselves trapped in a cycle of short-term contracts, internships, or low-wage jobs that don't offer any real prospects for advancement. This is creating a lost generation of young people who are unable to contribute fully to the economy. Not only is this a social issue, but it also threatens long-term economic growth. If young people aren't able to find work, they won't be able to save, invest, or spend, which in turn stifles demand and economic expansion. On top of this, Spain is dealing with another significant issue: inflation. Like many countries in Europe, Spain has been hit by rising inflation, particularly in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. The cost of living has increased dramatically. Food prices, energy bills, and housing costs have all shot up, making it harder for the average person to get by. Wages, on the other hand, have not kept pace with inflation, meaning that many people are effectively earning less in real terms than they were a few years ago. This is putting immense pressure on households and reducing consumer spending, which is crucial for economic growth. Now, let's talk about Spain's public debt. Since the pandemic, Spain's government has been borrowing heavily to keep the economy afloat. Government spending on social services, healthcare, and stimulus packages helped soften the blow of the pandemic, but it came at a cost. Today, Spain's public debt is over 100% of its GDP. That means Spain owes more than the entire value of its economy. While this level of debt isn't uncommon in the modern world, it's still a dangerous situation to be in. The government must continue borrowing to pay off its existing debts, which can quickly become unsustainable if interest rates rise or if the economy slows down. Spain's debt problem is compounded by its reliance on external borrowing. Much of its debt is held by foreign investors, meaning that if confidence in Spain's economy were to falter, those investors could start pulling their money out. This could lead to a sharp rise in borrowing costs for Spain, making it even harder for the government to service its debt. In the worst-case scenario, this could trigger a sovereign debt crisis similar to what we saw in Greece a decade ago. Why does this matter for the rest of Europe? Well, Spain is the fourth largest economy in the Eurozone. If Spain's economy were to collapse, it would send shockwaves throughout the entire European Union. Trade, investment, and financial markets across Europe would be affected. Banks in other European countries are heavily exposed to Spanish debt, meaning that a crisis in Spain could easily spread to other nations, creating a contagion effect. And with countries like Italy and Greece already facing their own economic challenges, the Eurozone is in a fragile state. It's important to note that the European Central Bank and the Spanish government are aware of these risks. They're working to stabilize the economy and prevent another crisis. But the question is, will they act quickly enough? Can they implement the necessary reforms to fix these underlying problems before it's too late? Or are we looking at another Eurozone disaster in the making? Spain's economy faces multiple challenges. The housing market is overheated, unemployment remains stubbornly high, inflation is eroding people's purchasing power, and the country's debt is piling up. Each of these issues on its own would be cause for concern, but together they create a perfect storm that could have devastating consequences not only for Spain but for the entire Eurozone. So, what do you think? Is Spain heading for an economic disaster, or can it turn things around before it's too late? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to stay updated on the latest global economic trends, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take on Spain's economy and the future of the Eurozone. Also, if you're interested in deep dives like this, check out our other videos on economic issues around the world. See you next time.